Okay, welcome everyone to the Judiciary Committee. We have several decision-making only agendas today. The first one is slated for 10 o'clock, has one bill on it. That's SB 1032. This is relating to campaign finance, prohibits foreign entities and foreign influence business entities from making contributions, expenditures, electioneering communications, or donations for election purposes. A recommendation on SB 1032 is to pass with some amendments. We'll replace the proposed subsection 11-356D, which would have required every business entity making campaign contribution or expenditures to certify to the Campaign Spending Commission within 7 business days of the making of a contribution or expenditure that the entity was not a foreign corporation or foreign influence business entity at the time. And we'll replace that with language that will allow such an entity, if it intends to make contributions or expenditures within an election cycle, to certify that it did not and will not be a foreign corporation or foreign influence business entity for the entire election cycle. We'll insert language specifying that if the conditions that determine whether a business entity qualifies as a foreign influence business entity are held unconstitutional by a final judgment, including all appeals, the Campaign Spending Commission will establish revised conditions that are constitutional and further the state's interests as set forth in this bill. And we'll also add language to the committee report noting a case out of Minnesota, a federal district court case that affects a similar Minnesota law. Questions or concerns? If not, Vice Chair Gabbard for the vote.
On SB 1032 SD1, recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair Rhodes.
Aye.
Vice Chair votes aye. Senator Chang.
Aye.
Senator San Buenaventura.
Aye.
Senator Owa.
Aye.
Measure passes.
Thanks very much. Okay, so we'll go ahead and roll to our 1001 agenda since it's already after 1001. First up on the 1001 agenda is SB 401. This is relating to firearms. It makes firearms firearms or rifles with the capacity to fire ammunition of 50 caliber or higher, excluding antique pistols and revolvers and muzzle loaders, puts it on the list of prohibited weapons. Recommendation here is to pass with some amendments. We'll go ahead and exclude shotguns from the coverage of the bill because typically we tend to think of shotguns in terms of gauges, but they do also have a caliber, and not trying to get rid of shotguns. We'll grandfather all the devices that would be banned by this bill if legally registered as of the effective date of this bill, but after that, you couldn't be able to sell them in the state or transfer them in any way in the state, including by inheritance. And we'll put in the committee report findings considering statistics about the prevalence of firearms. And we do have prior concurrence. Questions or concerns?
Yeah, I still have concerns regarding the lack of inability to inherit.
Okay. All right. So noted. Any other concerns? If not, let's go ahead and vote.
Okay, Chair Rhodes.
Aye.
Vice Chair votes no. Senator Chang.
Aye.
Senator San Buenaventura.
No.
Senator Owa.
Aye.
Measure passes.
Thank you. Next up is SB 308. This expands the bans on pistols with the detachable magazines with over a 10-round capacity. Any firearm with a with a detachable magazine. With a detachable magazine over a 10-round capacity. So for years, pistols have had a 10-round limit and long guns have not. So this bill would fill that loophole. Recommendations to pass with amendments will allow clips of up to 30 rounds for any of the firearms not currently covered by the 10-round restriction. So pistols will be still limited to the 10 rounds, but other firearms will be limited now to 30 rounds. And we'll put findings and information about the bill in the committee report. Questions or concerns?
Yes, my understanding was also this was going to be grandfathered into for those who are beyond that there should be a grandfather clause.
I don't know how that would work with something like this. I don't know how it would work. There's so many of them around. Okay, we'll put in a grandfather clause. We'll try to figure out how it works later.
That sounds good.
Any other questions or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair Gabbard.
On SB 308 SD1 to pass with amendments, are there any no votes or reservations?
Reservations.
Reservations for San Buenaventura, Senator Awa,
No.
Vice Chair votes no. And the measure passes.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up is SB 382. This prohibits a procurement officer from disclosing a competing offeror's proposal or evaluation score except the summary of scores during a brief debriefing requested by a non-selected offeror. Recommendation here is to pass as is. Questions or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair.
On SB 382, recommendations to pass as is. Any no votes or reservations? Hearing none, the measure is adopted.
Thank you. Next up is SB 598. This extends the time restrictions in which the Hawaii Administrative Driver's License Revocation Office is required to issue a written review decision of a notice of administration revocation of it. Did I skip one? Oh, I'm sorry, 597. I read the bill number wrong. Extends the time restrictions in which the Hawaii Administrative Driver's License Revocation Office is required to issue a written review decision of a notice of administrative revocation of a person's driver's license. It would extend the time periods to basically it's to allow the labs to have enough time to process to do the testing. Recommendation is to pass as is. Questions or concerns? If not, Senator Gabbard.
On SB 597, recommendations to pass unamended. Any no votes or reservations? Hearing none, the measure is adopted.
Thank you. Next up is SB 771. This repeals the requirement that the chairperson of the Hawaii Housing Finance and Development Corporation Board of Directors be a public member. Repeals the prohibition that certain ex officio board members shall not be eligible to serve as chairperson of the HHFDC Board of Directors. Recommendation here is to pass as is. Questions or concerns? If not, Senator Gabbard.
Recommendation on SB 771 is to pass as is. Any no votes or reservations? Hearing none, the measure is adopted.
Thank you. Next up is SB 1170. This is relating to the expeditious redevelopment and development of affordable rental housing. Exempts certain affordable rental housing projects from the requirements for special management area use permits, clarifies eligibility for affordable housing projects to receive an exemption. Recommendation on 1170 is to pass with amendments. Like to accept the amendments from a couple of the amendments from the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. We'll amend section 1A, subsection 1A and B of the measure to subject special management use permits to the purposes of 205A-26, which is special management area guidelines. Limit the issuance of permits under the bill to redevelopment after wildfire, hurricane, flooding, tsunami, or earthquake proclaimed by the governor to constitute a state of emergency, and delete the exemption of the issuance of the permits from all statutes, charters, provisions, ordinances, and rules related to special management areas, as it would appear to conflict with the previous section in the bill. Questions or concerns? If not, Senator Gabbard.
On SB 1170, SD1, recommendation is to pass with amendments. Any no votes or reservations? Hearing none, the measure is adopted.
Thank you. Next up is SB 1296. This exempts certain reconstructions of all or a portion of a structure in the Lahaina National Historic Landmark District that was destroyed by the wildfire on August 8, 2023 from the requirements of a special management area minor permit or a special management area use permit. Recommendation on this one is to accept the amendments proposed by both the AG and the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development to replace subsection W as follows: reconstruction of any lawfully constructed structure that was damaged or destroyed in a disaster from wildfire, hurricane, flooding, tsunami, or earthquake proclaimed by the governor to constitute a state of emergency pursuant to Chapter 127A, provided that the structure is not situated on a shoreline parcel or a parcel that is impacted by waves, storm, surges, high tide, or shoreline erosion. Reconstruction commences within 5 years, starting from the issue date of the proclamation, and the reconstructed structure shall be similar to its original footprint or overall dimensions that were existing or permitted and in compliance with the requirements of floodplain management standards. Glad I don't have to read that again. Questions or concerns? If not, Senator Gabbard.
On SB 1296, SD1, recommendations to pass with amendments. Any no votes or reservations? Hearing none, the measure is adopted.
Thank you. Next up is SB 1318. This amends section 200-14 of the Hawaii Revised Statute to clarify that enforcement of criminal water pollution offenses remain under the jurisdiction of the Department of Health rather than the Department of Land and Natural Resources. Recommendations to pass as is. Questions or concerns? If not, Vice Chair.
Recommendation on SB 1318 is to pass as is. Any no votes or reservations?
No.
One no vote for Senator Wah. The measure is adopted.
Thank you. Next up is SB 1657. This authorizes the Agribusiness Development Corporation to acquire by condemnation any real property or interest in real property, including real property already devoted to public use. Recommendation here is to pass with an amendment. We accept the amendment proposed by DLNR to remove section 7B so that the ADC will not have the power to condemn public property. Yes, that's it. So no condemnation rights of other public property. Questions or concerns? If not, Senator Gabbard.
Recommendation on SB 1657 SD1 to pass with amendments. Any no votes or reservations? Hearing none, the measure is adopted.
Thank you. Next up is SB 1102. This establishes that the Chief of the State Aircraft Rescue Firefighting Unit of the Airports Division of the Department of Transportation shall serve not more than 3 terms of 4 years each, and requires the Director of Transportation to appoint the chief from a list of 3 qualified candidates. Recommendation here is to pass with an amendment. The State Fire Council will be the entity that gives the 3 names to the Director of DOT to name this position from. Questions or concerns? If not, Senator Gabbard.
Recommendation on SB 1102 SD1 is to pass with amendments. Any no votes or reservations? Hearing none, the measure is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Next up is SB 100. This provides that leaders of nonprofit organizations shall be exempt from county liquor commission's criminal history check requirements for license applicants. Recommendations to pass with some amendments. Replace the current substance with a provision that prohibits fingerprinting of officers, directors, and board members of nonprofits holding liquor licenses when performing background checks, and apply this bill to counties with populations of under 500,000. Questions or concerns? If not, Vice Chair.
Recommendation SB 100 SD1 is to pass with amendments. Any no votes or reservations? Hearing none, the measure is adopted.
Okay, thank you. We have one more agenda. It was the 1007 agenda, which we'll go straight into since it's 1013. This has one bill on it. I believe this was carried over from previous. No, I'm sorry. This is just a separate one bill agenda. SB 363, this allows the carrying or possessing of firearm parts only at or between certain locations and an enclosed container. Defines firearm parts and prohibited persons. This is really a cleanup bill from the ghost gun law that we passed in 2020. Recommendation here is to pass with some amendments. We'll accept the Department of Law Enforcement's proposed SD2 that does the following. Deletes the proposed new section titled Place to Keep Firearm Parts Penalty, and instead relies on the SD1 amendments to existing firearm statutes that prohibits possession under certain circumstances. We'll additionally amend HRS section 134.7, having to do with prohibition on firearms, ownership, possession, or control to incorporate similar amendments, and we'll delete the proposed definition of prohibited person that is no longer necessary. We'll expand the available penalties in 3 statutes to specify an indeterminate term of imprisonment. And there are technical amendments, and we'll leave that's it, technical amendments. Questions or concerns? If not, Senator Gabbard.
Recommendation on SB 363 SD1 is to pass with amendments. Are there any no votes or reservations?
No.
No.
Vice Chair also votes no. The measure is not adopted.
Okay, thank you. That concludes our business here. Members, we do have another joint hearing with Ways and Means at 1025 upstairs in 211. Thank you. We're adjourned.